about. Plants suffer too. Recent studies show plants are aware that they are being eaten. Oh, don't eat me! Should we become vegan? Is this the question? Should we become vegan? Is that the question? I'm not sure what the question was. If the question was, should we become vegan? You see, I don't necessarily believe that we should become vegan. You know, as the poem says, that वो शख्स अच्छा लगा, साफ दिल की बात थी, साफ कह दी. You know, that the person looked good, it was a matter of the heart, so I said it straight. हमसे मुनाफकत हो नहीं सकती. See, it's difficult being a hypocrite. The problem is that you've got to, you see, when it comes to these things, I eat meat, carnivorous. Do I feel that it is wrong to eat meat? I don't feel it is wrong to eat meat. Oh, vegan attack! Because look, because the way the world has been created, it's the thus decreed nature that the animals will just eat each other. Ab hum kaun hai yaar? How can we disrupt the flow of nature? It's ye parampara is coming. This tradition is coming since evolution. Now, it's not befitting for us to disrupt this tradition. So we need to kind of just go with it. Tuck into that burger. I had a discussion with I don't know whether it was a vegetarian or a vegan at one point, and and I said, well, you see, if you say that we shouldn't eat meat because of suffering, then I ask you, should we proactively prevent animals from getting eaten by other animals? Now this one's stuck, you know, this one, this one big problem. Oh, ethics. Should I starve the wolves? Starve the tigers and the lions? Oh, so the thing is that, you see, you kind of get stuck. So I say, look, don't worry about it. Because look, I understand that there's this thing of, they say, suffering, and I don't have an answer to that. But I also recognize that there is no way out of this. You see, you can't prevent nature from eating other animals, eating other parts of nature. It's nature. And even if you could prevent it, if you tried to prevent it, you would just ruin the entire ecology. You'd just ruin everything, and it would get out of control. You couldn't, because you see, you would either harm the carnivores by starving them. Now you could say that we would supply, imagine we could generate enough artificial meat to feed all the carnivores on Earth. The Earth's balance would actually, I mean, the ecological balance would actually be, I think, catastrophic. I think you couldn't just, it would just result in overpopulation of certain creatures, and because there's a balance in the kind of pecking order of things, and evolution has evolved in that way. So you see, if you, because it's a thought experiment, that imagine we could produce enough artificial meat to feed all the carnivores on Earth. Would that be a wise thing to do? Let's just say, as a thought experiment, I think the whole thing would go, it'd go crazy. I think you'd actually mess the entire ecological system up, because it works on a certain way that for nature to operate, for animals to thrive, they need to have the survival instinct. You see, if the survival instinct is not in play, it would actually destroy, because animals are not, they're not I mean, they are on a conscious spectrum, but they're not conscious like us. They're not kind of sitting down thinking, hey, what should I do next week? They don't work in that way. And if you don't believe me, you should check out the great the mice utopian experiment that I spoke about previously. You see, that was a very fascinating experience where a person tried to create a paradise for a researcher tried to, in an experiment, tried to create a utopia for mice. And I think he began with 8 mice, and he had plenty of capacity, plenty of provisions, food, he had water, things were always renewed, fresh. I think there were 8 mice to kind of mate and copulate and reproduce, and it worked amazingly in the beginning, because the mice were just like, wow, this is awesome, alright. And they're reproducing and reproducing and reproducing. But when it reached a certain number, you see, the results were shocking. You should read into it, because the results showed that the mice, their behavior became absolutely abnormal. There was a certain amount of mice, they would refuse to, the mice stopped mating. They weren't interested in mating anymore. The mothers would refuse to take care of the young. The maternal instinct began to die. It began, like, the whole thing is really fascinating. And they started to die off. It was really weird, but and part of it was that they lost the kind of the drive to survive, the willpower to survive, because animals don't work the same way humans work. They are driven by that instinct to survive, and if they don't have an environment that tests that instinct, after a while, I mean, it may be fun for the early first generation, let's say, but as they start to grow up and reproduce, it results in complete debilitation of these species. Cool. With that, let's move on to some other questions people